Whoa, buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, baby. Good morning and welcome to it, the Tuesday edition of the Michael Dukes Show, broadcasting live across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or translator, and yes, live around the world on the interwebs as well at michaeldukeshow.com, where you'll pick up the audio-only live stream and links to the podcasts and social media links, everything else. Everything else is there on the website at michaeldukeshow.com. Hi, how are you? Welcome to the program, Tuesday edition of the show, and that means that today we're going to be joined by our weekly guest and guests, plural, Brad Keithley, from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, will be joining us here in hour one to go over the weekly top three. And we've got some interesting things to kind of dive down into this morning that we're going to talk about. Also joined in hour two by Chris Story, the man from Homer, who will come on board and share with us our weekly life coaching and positivity. The positive mental at PMA, positive mental attitude adjustment. That's what we're going to get. A PMA adjustment, a PMAA. That's what Chris does for us every week, and it's one of my favorite sections of the week. I'll be honest with you. May not be everybody's cup of tea, but boy, do I need it sometimes. You know, just especially with the constant negativity that we seem to be facing in our daily world and our daily lives. This is that breath of fresh air that you've been looking for every week. So make sure you stay tuned for that, will you? Some of the topics we're going to be covering with Brad Keithley this morning include the entry of Doug Massie into the Senate race. He is running in what was District E and is now District, good Lord, I can't remember the name of the district. They switch them just about the time that I've learned them. It only took me 10 years to learn all the districts and figure out where pretty much everybody was. And just about the time that I remember them, well, then I can't remember the single, the number. So it used to be District E, and now it's District O, where Mike Shower was. Doug Massie is now going to be the challenger in that race. Brad's going to bring up some interesting points, because I've been scratching my head. I thought, man, Mike Shower's he's a good cat. He's the one guy that I think. But again, as I've always said, it's always good to have a challenger in these various districts because it keeps the candidates sharp and it brings people to the forefront, reminds them what they need to know. So anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about that. Then we're going to talk about the recent opinion piece in the ADN, which we'll get to here in a second, talking about this year's PFD from Karl Marx. I don't know if it was ghost written by Zach Fields or not, but it sure feels like it. And then finally, we will dive all the way down into the discussion on what the rest of the potential candidates look like on this year's ballot. And here's the interesting thing. Nat Hers over at the ADN actually has got a really good piece that I think breaks down these districts in a good way. It really kind of breaks them down and gives you an idea of what to expect in each and every race. and talks a little bit about some of the nail biters and some of the ones that are going to be, kind of a walk away. So if you haven't gotten a chance to go down and take a look at it, it's up on the ADN right now. The title of the article is "Tight Races Are Expected in Dozens of Alaska Legislative Districts." Here's the breakdown. And he gives a pretty good breakdown. I think he does. And so it kind of gives you a little bit of insight into some of the people who are running and what they do and everything else, and where the tight races are going to be, including some of the more interesting races that are coming out as well. So you can go take a look at that and get a feel for where everybody's at. Some of the highlights of that include, I think, District L, which is the new Eagle River, Chugiak, Peters Creek. That is the new Senate district seat, which is going to be battling it out between two former representatives, Ken McCarty and Kelly Merrick. Now, the question is, of course, will Merrick be able to survive her behavior as a representative, where she basically threw the party and her fellow Republicans to the dogs as she joined the democratically led coalition? Will that have an effect? I mean, I think it would be foolish to say it didn't have an effect, since she was censured by the party over that. But we'll see what's going on. Look for this race to hinge on Merrick's split from her party and how well it served her district, according to hers. But that's definitely an interesting one as well. One of the other ones that I think is going to be very interesting is the Senate District P race in Fairbanks, where Scott Kawasaki won that seat from Pete Kelly just 4 years ago in a narrow victory. Now, Kawasaki is a bit of a populist. He's been pushing for permanent fund dividends, but he faces a very popular city mayor, Jim Matherly, and we'll see how that fares. Now, there are two Republicans in the race, Jim Matherly and Alex Jaffra, and that obviously doesn't help when you're splitting off the vote in that way. But we'll see what happens as well. What was the other one that I wanted to? I should have marked this one that I didn't. Oh, the House District 13. This is going to be very interesting because it's Chris Tuck and Andy Josephson, who are both redistricted basically together, placed them both into the same district. Both have filed for re-election, but they have said that they are still negotiating between the two of them, and that one of them will eventually withdraw. Now, they have until the 25th to withdraw from the race, but whoever remains will face Republican Kathy Hensley, who ran unsuccessfully for the Assembly and for State House here recently. The argument, of course, is that if there is two Democrats, they will bleed votes off of each other, and eventually Hensley, that would strengthen Hensley's position. The one thing that separates the two of them is that, and I did not know this, I'll be honest with you, I learned something new every day. I was not paying close enough attention to this to know this, but that Chris Tuck is unabashedly a pro-life Democrat. He's, according to Suzanne Downing, he's that rare breed of pro-life Democrat who still exists, but generally not in elected office. Now, Andy Josephson toes the party line on everything from unrestricted abortions to allowing transgenders to compete in the girls' sports and all that. But they now have to decide who are they going to sacrifice in front of the, because this district is now more conservative than it was previously. Does that make Josephson the outside choice, the outside horse on this race? Will Tuck be more palatable because he is unabashedly, he's not a stealth pro-life candidate. He actually wrote a letter back in 2020 to the DNC asking them to change the party's platform on abortion. He's not making any bones about it. So does that make him the better choice in this district to run against Hensley? This is an interesting race. I mean, this is going to be a very interesting race as we go forward. Anyway, that's, this is definitely an interesting time to be alive when it all comes down to it. You got Harriet Drummond and Zach Fields. They're going to be duking it out against each other. This was the other one that was really interesting. So you've got District 22, which is Russian Jack and North Muldoon in Anchorage. Stanley Wright, who's a former aide to Mike Dunleavy, is one of the Republican candidates. The other Republican candidate is Lisa Simpson, who, if you recall, was charged with felony-level voter fraud in connection with Gabrielle Ledoux's 2018 reelection campaign. Now, I don't know what the final details of that were. I think that thing is still ongoing, but that's pretty brassy. You know what I mean? I mean, that's pretty like, hey, I was just indicted for felony-level voter fraud, but I'm going to run for re-election again. I'm going to run for election. That's good. And it'll be Stanley Wright and Lisa Simpson as the Republicans, with Ted Eichscheid as the Democrat in the race. He works as a planner for the Matsu Borough, but lives in the district. But Lisa Simpson, man, that's brassy. That's all I can say. Very, very, very brassy. Anyway, you can go take a look at this and see the different races and where everybody's standing up. And it doesn't cover every district because some districts are running unopposed and some are kind of a slam dunk. But this does lead to some of the more interesting races out there right now, including the Garantar and Forrest Dunbar race and others. And it gives you a little bit of insight into each one. So I'll post this up in the chat room, this article, so anybody who wants to go read it can, and take a look at it and give us their thoughts on it. Before we go here and get ready to jump into it with Brad Keithley, I do want to comment. I know Brad's going to go get into this article. There's an opinion piece that was put out here 3 days ago from Karl Mars, who is the former CEO of, or he was formerly with Siri. Now he's the CEO of Old Harbor Native Corp. And he wrote this, it's a really short piece, but talking about how this year's PFD is affordable but not sustainable. And I just love how you can read right through. This has got all the buzzwords that you've seen people like Zach Fields and others use over the course of time, talking about, how, this is absolutely not sustainable. We can't have, lose state services, but we can have a smaller, sustainable dividend check and a good economy without new taxes. But he commends how legislators fought back. And, it was just thanks to all the responsible legislators who voted to achieve reasonable balance by funding essential state services. I guess by forward funding $1 billion into education, that's somehow reasonably balancing essential state services. But I just, you read this piece and you're just like, did somebody else write this for you? Did you just read? I'm asking for a friend. Did you just sign this? Did somebody just said, hey, would you put this in the paper with your name on it? Okay, good. Because this is just a rehash of a lot of the other things. But I know Brad's going to get into this. I don't want to get too far down into the weeds and steal his thunder on it, but we'll see. All right, we're coming up on the break, so let's get to it. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio on this rainy Tuesday. Yeah, we use that rain. Been coming down outside the studio here for a little bit. Was laying in bed listening to a ting off the thing. I mean, it was nice to hear. A little bit of that wet stuff. We could use it. We'll be back with more. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show. Common Sense Radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break right now. Brad Keithley is going to be joining us here in just a second. Just Just going through. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Touch of rain, apparently out in the Hook. There was only a touch of rain. Still raining down here on the Knickerbocker Bay and raining all the way across the arm from what I can see, which is good. I mean, we could use a couple good days of rain. I've got no problem with that whatsoever. All right, let's I guess let me just get ahead of the power curve here. I hate it when I leave it to the last second. I've done that a few times, and it just, no sense in doing that. Let's get Brad Keithley on the phone, and we will get started from there. I washed my car yesterday. You're welcome. Thank you, Angie. Thank you for taking one for the team. We needed that for sure. All right. What the heck? Come on, give me where's my, all right, we're just going to do that. Open it. There we go. Wow. It was just taking its sweet time. We're going to join. There we go. Join without. There we go. All right, now we're ready to connect with Brad Keithley, so we'll get him on the horn here and be ready to go here in just a hot minute, and we'll get the connections tested and everything else. All right. Lisa with join with computer. Oh, look at you. You're out in some undisclosed location.
Oh, look at you. Yeah, I'm visiting my mother for a couple of weeks, so sitting out on her porch.
It's not a bad view, my friend. Not a bad view as well. All right, so Brad Keithley is with us, and you're all ready to go this morning?
I am. We may have a few birds in the background here. I just noticed, but
that's okay. Sometimes I hear your dog's collar in the background too. It makes me miss my dog. So it's or maybe it's your cat. Whatever it is, I hear a tingle of a collar from some animal in the background, and it just makes me miss my dog. So it's all good. You want to hold on just a second, Brad? I'll be right back to you.
Yep.
Okay. Coming up, let's see. Lisa Simpson was charged almost exactly 1 year ago. No news since, says Brian. I mean, I hadn't heard anything about I know that she and Gabrielle Ledoux had both been charged, but no word on exactly what that means or where that's coming from or where that's going to go. But again, kind of brassy when you're in the middle of being charged with election corruption. A little brassy to jump into the race again. Maybe not. Let me go back through here. Town hall meeting Thursday, 6:30 to 9 in Wasilla at Idita Park. Kirkman, Eastman, and conservative reps and senators be there. Okay. It's teasing rain in Soldotna. Should start any minute. Well, if it's like here, it's probably moving a little bit south, and it rained all night around my house, which is good. Again, we need it. We need a couple, 3 good, solid days of Juneau-style rain is what we need, just to keep the wildfires down because it's so nasty out there. Sunny in Fairbanks. Well, again, Fairbanks could use a little rain too because, oof, man, I was dry and hot when I was up there this last weekend. Dry and hot. Good morning. Herder agreed with me, read the same stuff from that opinion piece and felt the same things, which, again, it just sounds like more talking. It's like Zach Fields has been emailing this out to everybody. And you want to put your name on it? Here, you submit it. I mean, it's just all the same talking points over and over and over again. Hello, friends. Greetings from St. Petersburg from Evan on Twitch. Good morning, Evan. Thanks for calling in or signing in or commenting. There we go. All right. We're getting ready to jump into this. We're about 30 seconds out. Brad Keithley is our guest. I'm going to close that, and I got to close a few things here because it's about to get internet intensive here in just a hot second. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Make sure you like and share this video, and like and follow the show page. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell on YouTube as well. Let's get to it. Here we go. We're 20 seconds out, and let's get it done right here. All right, continuing now, getting things ready. It is that Tuesday show where we do the weekly top three with our friend Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. He joins me now from a beautiful location with visiting his mom somewhere, and it is obviously green and beautiful and bright, and we welcome him to the program. How are you, sir? It's my dream to be able to broadcast from outside just all the time. I mean, in the beautiful breeze and everything. Thanks for coming on this morning.
It'd be a little tough in winter up there, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, 40 below broadcasting, it'd be a quick show. Let's put it that way. There wouldn't be a whole lot to talk about, for sure. But yeah, welcome to the program.
Thank you. How are you doing?
You know what? It's again a little rainy here today. We need it. Like I said, was saying during the break, we could use a couple solid days of rain just to tamp things down a little bit. But we'll see where this leads us. Brad, let's talk. Let's start things off here this morning. This opinion piece from Karl Marx was
we're going to start with Doug Massie.
Oh, we're going to start with Doug Massie. You're right. I'm sorry. I apologize. I jumped the gun on that. I'm just so agitated by this thing. I wanted to go right to number two. All right. Well, let's talk about the race with Doug Massie, who is jumping into Showers District, which I think is weird because I think Shower is pretty much universally loved by most of his folks in his district, most of the voters in his district, and he's been doing a really good job. And yet all of a sudden, Doug Massie felt compelled to quit his job as a fish and wildlife guy and jump into this race. And the more that I look at his positions and the people who support him, the more I start to wonder how much of this is an attack by Republicans who are definitely pro-government Republicans. What do you say?
Oh, I think this is the pushback of the Jim Jansons and the others in the top 20%. We've talked a lot about getting conservatives to run against pro-government representatives. I think this is the pro-government crowd pushing back and running against conservatives. And Doug Massie strikes me a lot like a Click Bishop candidate. You remember that before Click joined the Senate, he had been Commissioner of Labor in Sarah Palin's administration,
right?
And then retired from that, whatever, and ran for the Senate up in Fairbanks, and has turned out, ran as a conservative, and I'm with you and all that sort of stuff, and then turned out to be a pro-government Republican. Doug Massie strikes me, has all the same characteristics. Massie is, has been in government, state government. Is now stepping out of state government, is supported by at least one union, the law enforcement union. You can see that when you look at his supporters on his website. But the thing that really tied it all together for me was looking at Massie's website, which went up on the day that he announced,
right?
And to his credit, I suppose, has some positions stated on key issues, and the one that I immediately went to check to see what was going on was the permanent fund. And here is his stated position on the permanent fund: I support the largest dividend Alaska can responsibly and sustainably afford. And that, it's indistinguishable from clicks.
Right.
When you see the word afford, I support the one that we can afford. You have Natasha von Imhoff, Click Bishop, Bert Stedman, leftover PFD advocate. So what I think they're trying to do, the pro-government Republicans, what I think they're trying to do is go out and get, the Alaska equivalent of a 4-star general, just like, they got Click to run, the Alaska equivalent of a 4-star general, who's going to say a lot of things about being conservative and against taxes and, keep spending. His position on fiscal responsibility, for example, is I will work to limit and responsibly manage state spending. We must live within our means. So they'll get somebody who will say those things, but when push, the Alaska equivalent of a 4-star general, but when push comes to shove, they're going to be, pro-government, pro-union, leftover PFD
right.
Advocates. that's going to be an interesting it's going to be an interesting race to watch. You got the Alaska equivalent of a 4-star general in there running with I was head of the state, wildlife troopers, and, I know government and I can get government down, and he'll say all those things, but just like Click did. But when you get to the end of it, it's going to be somebody who's going to get in there and vote with Natasha, or not Natasha anymore, but vote with Bert and Click and Gary Stevens and the other pro-government Republicans that are or big government Republicans rather, that are going to vote to cut the PFD, use PFD cuts to fund government. So I think this is I think it's an interesting race to watch. I think if Shower just holds his stuff together and points out who this guy is and what his positions are, that it'll be Shower's race to win in that district. But it's an interesting pushback by the by the big government Republicans, the Jim Jansen Republicans.
Well, and it's interesting because I'm reading through the issues on his page, and I hadn't even gotten to the permanent fund, and I had already pegged him because you hit it on that first point of fiscal responsibility. He says, "I'll work to limit and responsibly manage state spending. We must live within our means. I do not support unnecessary taxation." You can already see him taking the position of, we don't want to trade the dividend for taxation. He was already basically setting up that argument. To me, that was the first red flag right there in the beginning. And then, of course, you get into the discussion of, fully supporting and fully funding public safety and a dividend that's responsible, sustainable, and what we can afford, the leftover dividend, and more. This looks exactly to me very much like that, like you said, the pro-government spend Republican position. And it makes me shake my head. I mean, what's the point? Were they so offended by the things that Shower did, which is basically just state the truth as he saw it and fight for the fully funded dividend, that this is what they are going to throw against him, which I think is going to be a futile effort. Like you said, I think it's his race to lose. I think he's definitely got the upper hand here, but this is where they're going to waste that capital.
Well, they're going to try. I mean, the Alaska equivalent of a 4-star general, you got a guy who's willing to run. You got him backed by the unions. The unions are going to say, we're going to be behind you, just like they've been behind Click. Go out there. You got a nice haircut. You're going to be able to tell a nice story. Put on your Copper River fleece jacket and go out there and tell them, you're a conservative guy, and you know how to run for government. In the Nat Hertz article that you referenced, Massie was saying that he's like Shower in the sense that he's conservative, but he can get along with people. And Shower, leaving the inference that Shower is somebody who can't get along with people.
Right. He's going to be more. He's going to be more collaborative in his efforts rather than divisive, which is the implication. He's going to be divisive in his. I just think. But
that's. I mean, you got Jim Jansen. You got people. You got the conservative or the pro-government, big government Republicans out there who are pushing back and saying, we're going to run this guy. He's got an attractive resume. He's going to be able to say he's conservative. He's served in the Dunleavy administration, after all, and he's wildlife troopers. What could be more Alaskan than that? He's been the head of wildlife troopers. I mean, you're gonna have a resume, just like Click did. But when you strip all that away and look at his positions and look how the guy's going to vote. Says he's going to vote once he gets to he's not even hiding it, right? He's not even saying that I support the traditional dividend, or I support a POMV 50/50, or he's not even saying that. I mean, he's telling you, he's using the word afford, and so from the outset what he's going to do. When you strip all the 4-star general stuff away, you've got somebody who's just going to be another Click Bishop. So it's going to be an interesting race, but people need to fight. This is a good takeoff for the fact that people need to dig down into the positions that these people are taking. There's going to be other places where you're going to look like you're going to have, a pro-conservative 4-star general, very, a rah-rah guy for your side, running in the race. But when you look through the positions, when you ask the hard questions, and you strip all that away, you're going to see when they show up down in Juneau, what they're actually going to be like. And that's, and Massey's telling you from the beginning. He's not he's not even trying to hide it. He's telling you from the beginning what he's going to be.
Yep. They say in the article from Nat Hirsch, Shower has solid conservative bona fides, but has frequently clashed with members of his Republican majority over their more moderate positions. I mean, yeah, I guess that's how you look at it. Again, translate that into, again, pro-government, crony capitalism. And you mentioned Jim Jansen a couple times. For those of you who don't know, Jim Jansen is the CEO of Linden Transport, one of the big companies that was throwing huge amounts of money over the years on the fight against the PFD and other things. So, again, you could see that crony capitalism mentality with the GCIs and the Lindens and other companies throwing money to prevent Alaskans from getting their PFD so that there's more government money to spend on these private contracts with these different companies, right?
Well, there's more government money to spend on these contracts, but they don't have to pay for it,
right?
Because it's coming out, because they're in the top 20%. They pay a trivial amount of their income toward government. They shove the costs off on middle and lower income Alaska families. So it's a double whammy, right? They get the government contracts, they get the benefit of big government spending, but they don't have to pay for it by using PFD cuts to shove it off on middle and lower income Alaska families. So yeah, I would not be surprised. Jim Jansen, by the way, is one of the founders of Keep Alaska Competitive, that also pushes back on any changes to oil taxes. Not even, let's not even discuss maybe updating oil taxes for the 2017 Income Tax Act that changed corporate taxes and should have increased Alaska's share. Let's not even discuss those. I mean, Keep Alaska Competitive is no changes in oil taxes. We got what we want. Thank you very much. Don't change anything about it. Don't even talk about doing anything about it. So Jansen not only is don't cut the PFD, don't tax me, but cut the PFD, don't revise taxes to the oil companies either. It is the Alaska version of crony capitalism, and it looks, for all the world, it looks like Doug Massie is the candidate that's coming from that side. He
is the stalking horse in this race for that crowd. So just keep that in mind. Brad, let's give me a tease for number 2. I was just talking. I wanted to jump right into it because I was so agitated by it. This opinion piece from Karl Marx. Give me the quick thumbnail before we go to break.
Well, it's going to be the same thing. I mean, Karl Marx is part of the top 20% also. And Karl Marx is coming at it at a slightly different direction about don't tax you, don't tax me, tax those guys behind the tree, middle and lower income Alaska families through PFD cuts. It is, Karl Marx wrote almost exactly the same piece last December before the session. He's now writing it after the session, and we'll talk about the Zach Fields connection when we get back.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, is our guest. We're going to continue with him here in just a hot second. Don't forget, you can always come out and join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Michael Duke Show/live if you want to just type it in. Or you could search it up there or search us up on YouTube. We're still looking for some more subscribers on YouTube as well. Just go to youtube.com/user/The Michael Duke Show. Or type in my name, and you'll find us there as well. Subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. Do all the YouTube-y things. We're about to come back to it here in a moment with Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly Top 3 continues right after this.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show.
Oh, look at that. We're in the break now. It's all good. Brad Keithley is our guest, and we're continuing now talking about it. Michael Chambers just dropped a comment in the chat room, which again, he said, here's a little nugget. He said, I spoke with Nick Danger about a website. Now, Nick Danger is running against Elise Galvin, and I've been making jokes about how Nick Danger, that he's missing out if his campaign theme song isn't Danger Zone. Kenny Loggins' Danger Zone from Top Gun, Danger Zone. But apparently, according to Mike Chambers, he said he talked to him and he said he didn't want a website because Elise Galvin is a close, good friend, and he wants her to win. It's not a great Republican. I mean, Nick Danger is supposed to be a Republican, and he wants Elise Galvin to win, which, yeah, I guess. Oof, what a hot mess that is. Anyway, thank you for the insight on that, Mike. Anyway, Brad, I guess let me recycle my thoughts on this Doug Massie thing. I just find it so interesting that there are a group of Republicans who are so hell-bent on growing and on maintaining and growing the spend in state government that they seem to have fallen so far off of the principles of what people would assume the Republican label would mean for them. And I can't wrap my brain. I mean, what it really has become is it's more about greed. It's really about the worst parts of capitalism in that regard. Again, the crony capitalism aspects of it, because it is, we want all these things, but we don't want to have to pay for it, and we'll make government do it because government can take everything at the point of a gun and do all this kind of stuff. It really is, it's really disheartening.
Well, yeah. I mean, you've got it in every state, though. I mean, sometimes it shows up as Democrats. One thing I've come to learn about Alaska, or think about Alaska, particularly with respect to the PFD issue, is it's not Republican and Democrat. It is big government, I don't want to pay for it, versus small government, we ought to let the people have a part of the state's resource wealth directly. That's the division. And you find R's on both sides of that issue. You find D's on both sides of the issue. And that's really the dividing line. So, people adopt the R because Alaska is largely red, votes for Republican presidential candidates, votes for Republican gubernatorial candidates. So they want that R behind the name. So people will think they're conservative. People will think they're in alignment with what voters believe. When push comes to shove, they aren't there. I mean, Gary Stevens, in any other state, Gary Stevens would be a Democrat. In any other state, Click Bishop would be a Democrat. But in Alaska, they call themselves R's Republicans, in order to, align themselves with that part of the electorate that's just looking for the letter behind the name. But when you get to the substance, they are the big government, but I don't want to pay for it crowd that you see in every other state.
And it is a function. I agree with Rob Myers on YouTube, who said it's been a function. Alaska's been full of big government Republicans ever since we've had a large amount of oil money to spread around and built businesses on that principle. And I would agree with that. I mean, that wealth of oil money that was being spent willy-nilly is definitely a big push for that. And you've got whole businesses, like you were talking about, Jim Jensen and Ron Duncan and others, who have built entire business models around that government spend. Of course, they don't want to disrupt the government spend. Of course, they don't want to add more oil taxes and change the structure at all when things change, because it would rock their boat, and they don't want to do that.
Yeah, and now that we've gotten to the point where where government has grown so big that oil can't pay for it anymore, they want to find somebody else to pay for it.
Right.
So the PFD, taxing middle and lower income Alaska families by cutting the PFD is just, one more effort to maintain big government, to maintain the government contracts, maintain the government spend, but they don't have to pay for it. It is in every step of the way. It's the same thing as when we had oil, except now, instead of doing it on the backs of oil revenues, they're going to do it on the backs of middle and lower income Alaska families by taking their money to continue to sustain government.
There's also, Massie also has some interesting supporters as well. Some of his endorsements have been very interesting. So we're going to watch that as we go through and see what it looks like. But yeah, I'm very concerned about where this is going in the long run. And I think Showers, I think it's his race to take for sure. But it shows to me, it shows the desperation of these people. They understand who the real threat is, and they're going to try and throw something against that. We got about 20 seconds here. We're gonna rejoin the radio. Brad Keithley is our guest, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Again, please, folks, if you would like and share the show page, like and follow. We're going to dive into this right now with Brad Keithley for part 2 of the weekly top 3. Let's do it. All right, we're back now. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, is our guest. We're talking about the weekly top 3, and we're into number 2, which is the opinion piece from Karl Marx, which is a lot of recycled word salad that we've seen in the past, and more of the same. Like I said, it could have been written off of a floor speech from Zach Fields. Brad, your thoughts on this?
Well, there's a theme here. The title of Mars's piece is "This year's PFD is affordable, but not sustainable." And by that, he means it's not affordable in future years when oil revenues go back down, are anticipated to go back down. I mean, that's what the futures market is telling us, and that's what production forecasts are telling us. As oil revenues go back down, this is a signal, or this is an indication that they believe they're going to go in and need to raid the PFD again to continue to pay for government. Marx is another one of those top 20%, business leaders who is out there opining that the PFD, that's really meant for government. We temporarily gave it to people as dividends, but government's entitled to go grab it, and sort of like your stockbroker is entitled to go grab your money whenever he wants to. The government's entitled to go grab it to continue to pay for government, and it's the top 20% opinion piece that comes out periodically every 6 weeks or so. Sometimes Jim Jansen puts his name to it. Sometimes Karl Marx puts his names to it. But it's the continuous sort of we can't afford the PFD, and so we need to, and so we're going to need to cut it. Just get used to it. The thing I found really interesting about this, there is a Twitter feed that uses hashtag AKLEG, Alaska Legislature, and it's where most people go to post links or thoughts about legislative matters, about political matters, about fiscal policy matters, oil matters, all sorts of things. About a nanosecond after this opinion piece went up on the ADN, Zach Fields came in right behind it and posted it on the Alaska Legislature AK-Leg Twitter feed, and Fields' statement was 100% agree with this, and then he linked to the Mars column. So what's really going on here, I think, is the Democrats are looking for cover on their positions. The cut the PFD Democrats are looking for cover on their PFD positions, and they're using Marx, Jansen, and others in the business community to sort of give them some credibility on the issue, right?
Right.
Sort of trying to say, well, this is what the business community thinks. I'm a Democrat, but I still agree with the business community.
Right. We're not quite
this
so.
Is what the business.
We're not quite so radical. I mean, this is not a radical position. Look at all the reasonable people who are taking this position, right?
Yeah, exactly right. It's a feedback loop, right? It's the top 20. It's the Democrats saying we want to continue to spend, and we're willing to let you off the hook as long as you, the top 20%, off the hook, as long as you allow us to continue to use the PFD to continue big government spending. But you got to back us up on this, say the Democrats. And so the business community comes in and says, hey, the PFD is not affordable, not sustainable. And so, we've got to cut the PFD. And then the big government Democrats say, look, we got the business community behind us. The business community is saying we're doing the right thing. So it's this feedback loop that's going on that became very clear when you saw the Mars commentary, the top 20% business leader, business community commentary, and then you saw Zach Fields right behind it, just sort of sitting there waiting to punch the send on his tweet once this commentary came up.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. And I think it also points to the fact that we may need to get a little bit better organized on the pro PFD side, the pro smaller government side, in getting our opinion pieces out there as well and having more of that out there. We need to show that there is bipartisan and unified support for smaller, more limited government and for a full PFD as well. I guess there's some lessons to be learned there.
I will say one thing. What this really taught me, some people are taking the position that there's not a difference between Harriet Drummond and Zach Fields in their face-off for the House race in that district. They both got combined into a single House district by redistricting. They're running against each other, both incumbents. It's sort of like Garantar and Forrest Dunbar, right? There is a difference. Garantar, liberal, progressive on a lot of issues, but she's more or less been there on the PFD issue. Occasionally wanders away, but more or less has been there on the PFD issue. Dunbar, the times I've seen him talk about the PFD, is just perfectly fine cutting the PFD. So there is a difference in that district between Garantar and Forrest Dunbar. And actually, that's the district I live in. So I will be making a vote based upon that. And then you look over at Harriet Drummond and Zach Fields, and there's actually a difference there. I mean, Harriet's not been a staunch supporter of the PFD, but she's certainly not been out in front of, justifying PFD cuts and doing this feedback loop with business Republicans to try to rationalize what they're doing. So I think that tells us even in districts where that are predominantly Democrat districts, where there's Democrat on Democrat running, to be careful and look for their position on the PFD, because you're going to be able to see some differences, I think, between the Democrats on those issues.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, is our guest. We're finishing up with number 2. Let's move on to number 3, Brad, which is basically a look at the candidates for the coming year. I mean, what are we seeing, and what do you need to be looking at? Nat Hers, as I said, has a pretty good breakdown of the different races and everything else. What's your take on the field as it sits right now?
Well, I'm going to be looking at candidates, looking through their websites, listening to their positions, and I'm going to be listening for their position on the PFD, because I think that's where the rubber meets the road in terms of whether you're looking out for middle and lower income Alaska families, or you're part of this, crony capital society that we've built up in this state. And I think a good place to look for their position is how they react to the fiscal policy working group proposal that was put forward last year by some of the most conservative legislators in the Alaska legislature, and some of the most progressive legislators in the Alaska legislature. And I think that fiscal policy working group is a good. It wasn't used this last session, but I think it's a good starting point for coming together on a fiscal policy that can set a good way forward for the state. It talks about a POMV 50/50. It talks about constitutionalizing 50/50. And I think that really that's a really solid foundation to set for going forward. Mike Shower was part of, and I has spoken highly of the outcome of the fiscal policy working group, the recommendations made. Shelley Hughes was part of that group, and others. And so I think that's a really good foundation. I'm going to be looking for candidates that say, look, we've got to come to a resolution on this issue. We can't move Alaska forward until we have a resolution on fiscal policy. I'm looking for a candidate that's going to say, I'm going to support the outcome of the fiscal policy working group, and I'm going to work to adopt that and to enact that in coming legislatures. And remember, part of that is to constitutionalize POMV 50/50. So, if Doug Massie had said that we would have had a whole different conversation at the beginning. But that's not what he said. I mean, he said he's for an affordable PFD, which is, way off to one side of
whatever's left over, essentially.
Right. But candidates that I think merit close evaluation and support going forward are those that are going to talk about supporting the outcome of the fiscal policy working group.
And again, just to be clear, part of that fiscal policy working group includes solutions that include, just for the people in the chat room, not only reevaluation, not only cuts to government, but also reevaluation of the oil taxation structure and some sales taxes. And it's a holistic approach, right? It's a little bit of everything.
It is. I mean, it does. It explicitly talks about spending or cuts in government spending. It explicitly talks about POMV 50/50 on the PFD. It explicitly talks about constitutionalizing POMV 50/50, and then it talks about some substitute revenue sources to fill in the remaining gaps between what government spending is and what and the revenues provided by existing oil taxes and or traditional revenue sources and the other 50% of the POMV after you take out the dividend. And those other taxes can come in the form of oil taxes, or they can come in the form of individual taxes, like the PFD cuts have been, are an individual tax. So it doesn't say raise oil taxes by 2%, or it doesn't have any particulars in it that tie people's hands, but it is the general philosophy of some government spending cuts, tying down the PFD at POMV 50/50, which involves, frankly, some cuts in the PFD, and then some new revenues or some substitute revenue sources to fill in the gap. And it's a little bit of everything to get to a solution that then we can lock in on and go forward from there.
So basically, the questions we should be asking these new candidates should revolve around all the aspects of the fiscal policy working group plan, and that would give us a better, a little bit of a better look at where they stand on most, if not all, of these issues. Brad Keithley, final thoughts here, last 30 seconds.
Well, I think it's more than just I think the question is, do you support the fiscal policy working group, the outcome of the fiscal policy working group and the recommendations? And hopefully the answer to that's yes. That's the starting point for me for a candidate.
Okay. Brad, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We will talk with you again soon. Thanks for being part of the show.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
Folks, we're out of time for this segment. Hour 2 is dead ahead. We're going to have some open line, then Chris Story. We'll continue in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Brad Keithley, final little section here. And just to, for those of you who showed up late and missed the fact that Brad was criticizing Jim Jensen for blocking any changes to the oil and gas tax tax scheme. Harold's in the chat room criticizing you for not talking about, changing the tax. You missed that, Harold. He was talking about that earlier. And of course, again, that's part of the fiscal policy working group is a plan. And in fact, the number that I think was dialed in there is somewhere in the $200 to $300 million range for new taxation to come out of oil. Plus, again, something commensurate coming out of the private sector with some form of tax as well. But again, it's all on the table at this point. Everything's on the table.
Yeah, exactly right. There are, people have talked about $400 million coming from oil. The total new revenues that the fiscal policy working group outlined was $500 to $700 million in new revenues. That was based upon the revenue forecast at the time the working group was trying to come together. The revenue forecast has changed. That likely would change the need for additional revenues. Oil could take up a big chunk of that, updating the oil tax code. But the point is, you've got candidates out there like Doug Massie, who are going to be, Jim Jansen Republicans, big government Republicans, who are going to say, let's take it out of the PFD. We don't need to tax anybody else. Let's just take it out of the PFD. It's, free government money, and we'll just use it for good things that we, the 60 down in Juneau, the 60 plus one down in Juneau, decide we're going to use it for, and we don't need to tax anybody. That's what Massie's going to say. So, you've got to find people who are willing to recognize that not the right solution, that just pushes the burden back on middle and lower income Alaska families, and that the right solution is one that spreads the burden out. And by spreading the burden out, makes the burden on any given individual or any given industry relatively small.
And gives everybody skin in the game, so that, again, all of a sudden that top 20%, when they have to start forking out money for these big pro-government, all this big government spend, all of a sudden they'll be like, whoa, wait a second. It's going to cost me that much? Maybe we shouldn't be spending that much. Exactly. And again, this is the biggest problem with this whole situation is that they want to avoid all of those things. They don't want to see any of it. And the problem, of course, is they've built all these businesses, and I've said this many times before, but I'll say it again. When you've built an entire business model around the government spend, how private sector are you really when that's what you've built it on? And you spend millions of dollars trying to sway the public interest for it in the other direction for more government spending. How much of a small business or a private sector business are you really? The big ones are probably doing just fine. Somebody said earlier, I think it was Kevin McCabe said earlier, something about the small business people are probably feeling it in a whole different way. The small businesses who don't have these huge government contracts are probably feeling it in a small way, Brad.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's, ICER's 2016 study of the PFD found the various fiscal solutions, that of all of the solutions, taking the PFD was the hardest on Alaska business, the hardest on overall employment, the hardest on overall income, because Alaskans, by and large, plow that money back into Alaska and into Alaska businesses. But it's not. The difference is individual Alaskans decide where to spend that money, as opposed to keeping it in government and then allowing the 60 plus one to decide where that money goes.
Right.
And you get the Jim Jansens and the GCIs. They don't want the 60. They don't want Alaskan individuals deciding where to put that money. They want the 60 plus one deciding where to put that money, because they can lobby them. They can go down to Juneau and say, "Oh,
it's easier to influence
for the children, or it's for the elderly, or please just put some of that money toward my business."
It's cheap marketing. I mean, if you look at it that way, right? It's easier to influence 60 plus one than it is to influence 700,000 people. So they can do it all. It concentrates their power in that regard. This is another reason why I was so infuriated with this last go around of the PFD, that you saw all those chambers of commerces sending letters down there supporting a smaller dividend. If I was a member of a chamber of commerce, especially a small business, I would be wanting to burn somebody's house down. I definitely would have pulled my membership over something like that, because you're just helping the big boys, not the smaller businesses who make up 80% of the chambers of commerce. Down to less than a minute here, Brad. Your final thoughts.
And who was one of those who wrote an op-ed in support of the chambers of commerce and opposing the PFD? Jim Jansen. Keep Alaska competitive.
Yep.
I mean, so this all goes in a circle, and it's all being driven by those who want to keep the money inside government and control of where it's going by their control over the legislature.
Yeah, it's absolutely infuriating and frustrating. Brad, thanks for bringing this up and bringing this to our attention. Enjoy the beautiful weather wherever you're at, and enjoy broadcasting outdoors. I'm jealous. I'm just a little bit jealous in my dark hole here. So it's good to hear from you, and thanks for coming on board today.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me, and I'll send some of this weather your way. I'll try to send some of this weather your way.
You bet. All right, thanks, Brad. Appreciate you coming on board and joining us today. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. All right, folks, we are coming up on the hour 2 of the program. getting ready to rock and roll. Please make sure that you like and follow the show page on Facebook. And more importantly, I think right now, from my perspective, is to like and follow me on YouTube. Come on. My God, there we go. I was trying to get everything going on. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Across the world on the interwebs at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or translator. It is hour 2 of the Michael Duke Show. Hi, how are you? Thanks for coming on board and joining us. Definitely an interesting conversation this morning with Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, talking specifically about what he's going to be looking for in candidates coming forward. The field is set, and we're about to have a very, very interesting election season. Somebody, and I don't remember if it was Nat Herz or somebody else, basically made the comparison to say, because of the way the ranked choice voting and the jungle primary thing work, that really the primary in this go around is essentially going to be nothing but a poll to give people a little bit of a better idea of where they sit on these things. Because again, there's only one district in the whole state that has more than 4 candidates. That's District 35 up in the interior. And so it should be a very, very interesting very interesting political season to watch here. And I will have to say that finally, the state of Alaska figured out exactly what they were trying to do and exactly how they should be educating all the folks out there, because they finally came up with a piece of media, a piece of educational media that is supposedly they posted it up on, I guess on TV, I guess is what they're saying. Here is the piece that we're looking at right now. This is from the Division of Elections, and it's a 30-second spot that they apparently have now put up on television. I haven't seen it yet. I haven't heard it yet. But this was linked in one of the discussions earlier this morning. Here you go.
The special primary election for U.S. Representative is June 11th, and it's by mail. We start sending ballots out April 27th. You don't need to apply for a ballot. All candidates are on the same ballot, and all voters will get the same ballot, regardless of their political affiliation. You vote for only one candidate, and the top 4 vote getters move on to this special election. Make sure you and a witness sign your ballot and send it back by June 11th. Visit elections.alaska.gov to learn more.
So, I mean, good piece, I guess. Good piece for, at least for what it is, explaining to people in this primary that, here's what they need to do. But I don't know, I don't know how prevalent it is. Has anybody else seen it? Has anybody else seen it on any form of media? Maybe this is only going to digital media. Maybe this is only going out there to the to Facebook or to YouTube as video commercials there. I haven't heard it on the radio. I haven't seen it on television. But, I mean, that's, I would love to see more of that because I think it's going to be important. We're going to end up with a lot of people who, when they hit that voting booth, are going to be confused. We are going to be confused about what is going on because they haven't been paying attention. That's very understandable. So anyway, Kevin says he's seen it on TV. Terry says she's seen it on YouTube. Rick and Tawny both said that they've seen it as well. So this is the first time that I had ever seen it early this morning after it actually came off of one of the news reports that I was reading this morning. So Jimmy says he hears it about twice an hour on the radio. Wow. Apparently I'm listening to the wrong radio station or they're just not playing it down here. All right. So but at least they've finally gotten squared away on this. This is just the special primary election. And this, of course, only is valid until Saturday, which is the final thing. Everybody else has been hearing it. How have I not been hearing it? Interesting. Several people in the chat room said they've been hearing it for a while. My dad, even my dad saw it on YouTube. So apparently I have not been watching enough YouTube to get the whole thing. Yeah, don't I run radio stations? Yeah, it hasn't been on my radio stations. So, I mean, not that that's has to be, but, would think I would at least get a little bit of a feel for it. But I listen to other radio stations, but I haven't heard it yet. So I guess I work too much, as Jimmy. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I do work too much. Maybe that's part of my issue. Anyway, so what else we got going on here? Let me close some of these windows here. Phone lines are open this morning as well if you want to talk about this elections. I mean, are you fully vested and are you up to it? Should we do a quiz? Should we have people call in and quiz them on this? Harold seems to think that this is no big deal, that everybody's going to get it. Everybody's going to understand it, no problem. He gets it, so of course everybody's going to get it. So, I mean, maybe we should do a quiz. If you think you know everything that's going to be happening and the way it's going to be happening and you want to be quizzed, call us up and we'll talk about it. 433-3150 on the Satellite West call-in number. If you want to test, we'll test you right now. 433-3150. Give us a shout, and we'll test your knowledge on everything that's going to be happening over the next few weeks of this election. Come on, I want to see it. Let's see if you guys have got the rundown on it. I gave you the full rundown again yesterday. On how everything is going to work, and there you go. All right. Bag of beard curler. You know what? I said this the other day, and I don't know if people got it, but it's been 5 months. I finally got a new shipment of beard curler coffee, courtesy of our friends at Alaskan Artisan Coffee Roastery there in Palmer, where it's roasted fresh with fresh mountain and lake air right there in beautiful Palmer. I do have a bag of beard curler coffee. Why not? If you can nail it for me on the phone, I will give you a bag of coffee. If you can nail every part of the process on the phone and answer for me all the questions and do it to my satisfaction, I will give you a bag of beard curler coffee, because why not? I got one. Let's get it done. Thank you to the friends, by the way, over there at Alaskan Artisan Coffee for making up my favorite roast for me. One that I'm proud to put my beard on, the beard curler coffee. 433-3150, 433-3150. If you want to answer those questions and get things squared away, we'd love to hear what you guys have to say this morning as well. Again, a couple of the interesting things that came out of this discussion was the race for House District 13. And we mentioned this. We mentioned this earlier in the last segment, but it was something that I had not picked up on earlier. That, District 13 is going to be very interesting. That was where the redistricting board pulled 2 Democrats into the same House district, and that would be Chris Tuck and Andy Josephson. Kathy Hensley, who had originally filed for another seat, withdrew from that seat and is now running for the House seat in District 13 as well. But having 2 well-known Democrats duking it out over each other and splitting their vote is not going to make sense. They had already announced in this piece in the ADN, they had already announced that one of them is going to ultimately withdraw. They said they're still negotiating and that one will withdraw. Now, whoever remains is going to face Kathy Hensley, who's a conservative Republican who's done a pretty good job of making her name well known. There's still an AIP party candidate in there as well, Timothy Hewitt, but I think Hensley is really the one to beat in that other end of the race. But the differences between Chris Tuck and Andy Josephson, it's interesting that this may actually come down to who is pro-life. It turns out that Tuck is not fully in line with the Democratic Party's, radical abortion platform. According to Suzanne Downing, he's the rare breed of pro-life Democrats who still exist, but generally not in elected office. Josephson, on the other hand, lines up with his party on every issue from unrestricted abortion to allowing transgenders to compete in girls' sports. The district now favors the more conservative candidates, making Josephson the odd man out. With ranked choice voting, Hensley and Tuck may be the real contest, with Hewitt peeling off votes from both sides. And she goes on to say that Tuck has not been quiet. He's not been secretive about being pro-life. He doesn't hide his opinions, and even signed a letter in 2020 asking the Democratic National Committee to change the party's platform on abortion, saying that it is wildly out of step with where Americans are on the matter. And she actually then quotes the letter that he wrote to the DNC. And pro-choice is the hill some or many hardline Democrats will die on this year, with Roe v. Wade coming, the overturning of that, as it is expected to. For Democrats to support a pro-life candidate like Tuck and sacrifice a pro-abortion candidate like Josephson could make it for a very interesting few weeks as we go forward on this. And yeah, I agree. So lots of interesting races to watch. This is just yet another one where the politics of the matter are quite honestly fascinating. And we'll be watching this with great abandon to see where this comes out to. All right, we're coming up on the break. We got Chris Story coming up in just a moment. He's going to be part of our PMA uplift for that. Well, he's not going to be a part of it. He's going to be leading our PMA update and our life coaching lesson for the week. That is all directly ahead. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll be back with more and Chris Story in just a moment on your home for common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes,
allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Whew, man. A lot of people aren't understanding the exhausted ballot, says Kevin. Yeah, I know. A lot of people don't understand a lot of the ins and outs of that. And I think it's been incumbent on the government today. But again, this is the first time I've heard this ad. So apparently I've been living under a rock. Or my ad blocker on YouTube is really effective. One of the two. Republicans are 100% pro-life, and the demographics of pro-abortion lean a majority Democrat. That's true. That's true. If you can understand the simple instructions on the ballot, you've won. Go buy a can of Folgers. Okay, Harold. I don't know why Harold has to hate on good coffee. He insists on drinking the he insists on drinking the swill. Very few in the villages know about the process as they don't have radio or TV, says Willie. Yeah, exactly. Charlie Pierce will prevail in ranked choice. That's a fact. I hope you're right. Wouldn't I get some revenue? Well, yeah. I mean, if we were getting a commercial buy, there would definitely be some revenue there. But I haven't heard anything on it, and I would have seen that come across my desk. So it's interesting to see that they're buying some, but not everybody. Okay. Some of you being really quiet. There's a few of you that are very verbose, and the rest of you are being super quiet this morning. So why doesn't everybody at least say hi in the chat room this morning? There's 43 of you. I should get 43 highs out of this, 43 hellos, not 43 highs, because that's something totally different. All right. Everybody say hi this morning in the chat room and give me, see? Hey, Linda. I see. I hadn't seen Linda before. Brian. Well, 3 of you can follow instructions anyway. Voyeur, says Jimmy. Good morning, Gail. Good morning. Yo. All right. My dad said hi. Hi, Dad. Old, bald Anglo-Saxons dictating the reproductive rights of women isn't going over too well for the 2022 election. It's been a non-issue, Harold. I mean, I know what you think, but I've also read what a lot of the other folks who've got a lot better track record with politics think, and they said it's become a non-issue. In the words of James Carville, it's the economy, stupid. That's what it's really about. Reproductive rights has not been a good... By the way, this is not about reproductive rights. This is about killing the innocent. I mean, you want to frame it as reproductive rights, although I thought you were a Republican. It's about the murder of innocent children who had no say in how they got there. So it's not reproductive rights. Hi, Bill. How are you? Kathleen, good morning. Good morning. Non-issue, says Jimmy. Yeah, I mean, it's been surprising. A lot of these talking heads are like, whoa, we thought this was going to be a huge, and it's a non-issue. It's the economy, stupid. I paid $6.19 a gallon for gas yesterday. You want to know what people are thinking about? The $6.19 a gallon that they're paying for gas for their car or truck. I mean, that's what they're thinking about. They're not thinking about the rest of it. All right. Let me, oh, there he is right there. I was just going to hunt him down and figure out where he was, but lo and behold, he shows up. Mr. Story. They call him Mr. Story. Hello, sir. How are you doing?
I was right on time. What are you talking about? I literally, the clock rolled over to 24, and I punched your number. I'd like you to rescind your resentment.
There was no resentment. It was frustration. It was not resentment.
Oh, okay.
So you're good. Yeah.
Well, you're welcome to that feeling.
Yes, I know. I figured you'd like that a lot. Mm-hmm. What are we going to talk about today, my friend?
Coincidentally, how to rescind resentment.
How to rescind resentment. Okay, good. Well, good. We're going to do that, which seems to be, that'll be a full-time job around here. All right, here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like and share the show. Here we go. Well, the Sultan of Suave, the Pyramid of Positivity. No, that's not right. The Pharaoh of Positivity, but it doesn't have the P. It doesn't have the. I wanted it to be something, I don't know. The Gregarious Guru, the guy from Homer. Hey, Chris Story, how are you, my friend?
That devolved quickly, but I was enjoying it. I liked where you were headed.
I know. I was trying to find something. I'm gonna have to work on that in my off time and figure out something that where I can just give you some kind of random title that just sticks and makes it work. I'm trying to
do what you need to do. Put a team on it. Whatever you need to do.
Paragon. There we go. The Paragon of Positivity. Thank you. Ooh, I like that one. That's it. The Paragon of Positivity, Mr. Chris Story, who's going to tell us today how to handle resentment in our lives, which is, this day and age, dude, that feels like a full-time job. If you climb on social media, there going to be resentment. You spend 5 minutes on social media, you'll figure out all about the resentment, but you've got a way to handle this, so please share with us.
Well, I suggest not handling resentment because that means you're still dealing with it. My point is to rescind it.
Rescind resentment.
Rescind it. Get rid of it completely versus dealing with it or handling it. Or that's like juggling, resentment's up, down, up, down. Get rid of it completely. Toss the ball aside. And I want to give you a story about, I think this is a nice little parable, if you will, for the point I want to make. One day, my wife, Tiffany, and I, and Zoe was about 15, I believe. We were going down, we decided to take a raft trip on the Kenai. For whatever reason, thought, it's been a long time since we've done that. We hired a guide and we went on a raft trip down the Kenai River. And we did not see, in this particular stretch of river that we had apparently contracted to be floated down, had zero. I don't mean like, small whitecaps or small whitewater. It had zero whitewater. It was the most boring trip it's the most boring 2.5 hours of my life. As I think back over my life, I think it truly, and I've done some boring things, this is the most boring part of my life that I can recall. And I think it's analogous to a life without trouble, a life without any challenges, a life without any stretching or reaching or any sort of risk involved whatsoever. Is it worth living? Is that really what we want? Do we want zero problems? Do we want zero challenges in life? No. We want whitewater. We want to be able to handle it. We want to be able to safely get down the river, obviously. But there's going to be challenges, and it's the challenges, be it from other people or physically thrown at us through nature, whatever, that makes life interesting and makes it worth living. And it's our overcoming these challenges. So why would you hang on to resentment and relive a trespass over and over again? Now, you might be right. They may have trespassed against you, this other person. You may resent a circumstance that you were thrown into out of your control, but you overcame it or you learned a lesson from it. And that's the nugget. That's the golden nugget in the sluice box of life that you're looking for. And you let the rest of it move on by. You rescind resentment and you become grateful for having lived through that circumstance. Maybe this person was a professor of greed and they showed you what greed looked like, or envy, or some sort of other kind of hostile behavior towards you. But you've moved on. You've floated down the river. You've managed that Class 5 whitewater. And why would you go back and resent it and live it over again? No. I've learned and I've moved on. I rescind resentment.
So this is this kind of starts off with like, there's no sweet without the sour, right? That's kind of what you're saying. You wouldn't understand what sweet tasted like unless you could taste the sour at the same time. And so you have to have those adversities. Otherwise, you would be dead, dull, bored. It would not even be a trip. You'd just be you'd be a passenger. Instead of driving the boat, you'd be a passenger floating on through life. Everything's fine. I don't care. Everything's gray and vanilla and bland. You said you've done some boring things in your life, and I know that this show qualifies for that, but at least prop me back up here. How do you just take that resentment and how do you reset it? How do you turn it back?
it's so much easier said than done. And of course, I don't count these minutes spent with you, Michael, as that. I count these as definitely Class 5 whitewater.
Definitely Class 5 white.
Yeah, absolutely. It takes a really strong, bold, born to live blend coffee for me to be able to.
There you go. That's what you need.
But the way I think that I like to look at it is it's allowing. It's like a harbor. My life. This is my harbor. I get to determine who gets to have moorage here, and what event in life or who gets to moor their boat here. It's up to me. I do not have to let that person determine what my day or my life is going to look like, the emotions that I'm going to feel, or worse yet, relive. Reliving that event is the definition of resentment. So why would I do it? There are shows that I love to watch again and again. Like I've seen every single episode of Frasier, all 11 seasons. I can't tell you how many times. It never becomes boring to me. Never becomes unfunny. There's never there's one or two episodes of particular season of, oh, this is a great one. Shh, quiet. This is Little's about to say something. And I know the word's coming, but that's something that I enjoy. There are movies that I enjoy rewatching. Like I just rewatched A Few Good Men. Listened to it actually while I was running the other day because I just enjoy the dialogue of A Few Good Men. It is so amazingly written and acted. I love it. But if it's a movie I do not like, why on earth would I sit there and put my eyeballs on the screen and waste my time reliving it? And I think it's similar in the world of resentment.
That's the perfect analogy because, how many times have you watched a movie that's just irritated you and you're like, that's 2 hours of my life that I'll never get back. And then you're like, okay, well, let's watch it again. Why would you do that? Why? Yeah. That's the perfect, for me anyway, that's the perfect analogy because I'm like you. There are certain shows that I could watch or certain books that I could listen to over and over and over again. And there are some that are just like, oh man, kill me now. And why would I penalize myself?
Right. Exactly. And see, I think reality begins and ends in your mind. It's how you think. It's not what happens to you. It's how you think about what happens to you or how you relive the moments of life. And again, when we have resentment, we're harboring either, anger, hostility, where it's burning away inside in a way that is only causing harm to you. It's not causing the transgress. The person who transgressed against you, that trans person, may not even know what they've done. They may not even realize how they've hurt you or that this thing caused you this kind of grief. And yet you're sitting there watching that movie again and again, and it's causing you harm versus saying, you know what, click, I turn it off. And I'm not pretending that it didn't happen. I'm taking the gold nugget away with me. I'm taking away the opportunity to be better, to be wiser, to, the scar is there. I can see it, but I'm not sitting there reliving it moment after moment. And despite it, I just read about a scorpion in South America that literally when it gets so angry and it gets pushed to a point beyond its own control, it will sting itself and die. And it's like, we don't need to do that. We have control, so we can think differently. So it's not what happens to you, but how you think about what happened to you and then what you're willing to do into the future. And if you just want to sit there and relive it and complain and share your laundry with everybody who will listen, chances are good they're going to become few and far between. People are going to avoid you, and you're going to want to avoid yourself. So just rescind resentment. Sounds easy. It's a little trite to say it that way, but it's a great way to think about not reliving these moments in a horrific way, but maybe taking the nugget, going back one more time, watching that movie one more time, grab a nugget or two, and then click it off and never go back.
I think the most powerful thing you said in there is that the only person you're hurting in reliving that movie or revisiting that resentment is yourself. The person that you resent about, they don't care. They're gone. They don't know it doesn't affect them at all, whether they did it knowingly or unknowingly. The only person you're hurting is yourself, and why? Why would you do that?
And having gratitude, I think that's one more little spice for this recipe is having gratitude, because we're talking about it as though this person has done something to you or a group of people, and it might very well be, but sometimes we actually resent circumstances that maybe it wasn't set up by an individual or a group of people, but maybe just a circumstance that we feel we were thrown to the wolves unnecessarily, be it the station of birth, whatever, wherever you happen to be, or your ethnicity, whatever it is. How about replacing the resentment with gratitude? So it's like you can't get rid of one bad habit. The easiest way to get rid of a bad habit is to replace it with a good habit. All right, replace resentment with gratitude. I am grateful for having gone through this. I'm grateful my family went through this struggle, and now I have this opportunity to do something different, learn from that circumstance, and move on. So resentment is simply an anchor that's holding you back. And I really believe in visualization, and I believe if you can hang on to that idea of the movie or TV show, if that resonates with you. Or how about this? It's an anchor, and you can cut the line free and let it go, and literally in your mind visualize that anchor sinking to the bottom, and you get to move on. You get to free yourself from that old resentment and learn from it, and having gone down the river and knowing there'll be other white water to come, but you're not going to sit there and relive that over again. You've let it go.
Right. Well, again, I really enjoy and appreciate the whole movie analogy, because there's been plenty of times when I have watched something and said I shouldn't have even stayed through the end of that because it was so dumb and it irritated me. But I'm definitely never watching it again. And then there are other ones that I can just keep going back to over and over and over again. And I think that one really resonates with me. And I find it ironic that there are. I mean, we've all met people probably who are full of that resentment or irritation, at other people, that they're holding a grudge over something that happened, maybe yesterday, maybe 10 years ago. They're still holding a grudge. And at some point, those resentments come to almost define them at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's groups of people, be it politicians or groups in the media, that want to whip you into a frenzy of resentment. They want to whip up something old and stir it up within you, or a whole group of people, to resent this class and create and foment hostility between classes of people, so as to create, again, resentment and hostility, and from which they can rise as the victor, and I can solve your problems. And the reality is, individually, we are responsible for allowing ourselves to feel that or not, and how we think about it.
Well, it's the only thing we can control, right? The only thing we can control is how we react and how we think about circumstances or slights or resentments or positive things. The only thing we can control in life is really, to any real extent, is our reaction to circumstances. And I mean, that's part of it.
Yeah, I agree. And then don't resent the rapids. I mean, if you go back to that river raft, not only did we have the boring section of the river, we also had this guide who spoke like 4 words the entire time. It was awful. But you know what? As I look back on, I don't resent him or that time, because it actually taught me quite a bit. So I do not resent the rapids of my life. And that can sound cheesy, but I like, let's ride the waves. Let's grow forward, toss resentment overboard, and move on. Let it go. And you can grow forward. You can grow from these adverse circumstances. In fact, it's the adversity in life that actually, it grows muscle. It grows your opportunity to become better and aspire to who you wish to become through, these rapids or these difficulties or circumstances you wouldn't choose again, but you don't have to relive it over and over again.
I think we should take those resentments and turn them back into Blockbuster and then give it a negative review on Rotten Tomatoes. I think that's what we should do with that resentment. Right. We'll give it a bad review and turn it back into Blockbuster and not pay the late fees. I think that is the best thing to do with those resentments, using your movie metaphor all over again. But you're right. I mean, you are right. Occasionally you'll get that resentment in there, and you feel icky until you let it go. I can't say enough. That's really, in my opinion, one of the major problems with what's wrong today, is that everybody is resentful of somebody else, whether it's for an opinion or a viewpoint or something that they said. And if you just let it roll like water off a duck's back, and let it go and just say, they were ignorant, or they didn't mean it, or they were just being thoughtless, or whatever it is, and let it go, man, you're a better person for it when it's all said and done.
I have a guest on my show named Dr. Alan Leica out of Canada, and he was diagnosed with ALS in 2003. and told he had 6 months to live. You better get your affairs in order. And he wouldn't accept that diagnosis, and he refused, and he ended up seeing hundreds of doctors and finally found one who found the cure for a misdiagnosis. And he wasn't suffering from ALS. He had chronic Lyme's disease, and he was cured within months and everything went back to normal. He does not resent that diagnosis or what that doctor had basically, misdiagnosed. It doesn't have any resentment for it, and he's grown and come through that challenge, and now he's a best-selling author, and he's got millions of listeners on his Canadian radio show, and it's like, wow, there's zero resentment in his life for that. Even though he went through 6 months of living hell, he zero resentment, and he's moved on. And he says, you know what, Chris, you just have to laugh at the world and continue to move on. And I thought, what an inspiration. Well, if anybody can be resentful, he should be.
Well, and he used it obviously as a springboard to move on to the next phase of his life. So maybe those resentments can also be, again, springboards to move forward and to better yourself and to make things even, better than they were before. So some interesting stuff for sure. Chris, quickly tell us about your book and where people can find it.
Oh, I would love, if you're interested at all in this conversation, you will love a book called Born to Live. And it's available on Amazon or ilovehomeralaska.com. And it's a quick read. People tell me usually, I read it in a single sitting, but it's my favorite thing that I've ever done. It's called Born to Live, and it takes you about an hour to read it.
All right. You can find it again on Amazon or ilovehomeralaska.com. Chris Story, the paragon of positivity. That's right. We appreciate you coming on board, my friend. As always, it's I love what you have to say, and I appreciate you, steering us through the doldrums, the dull water of no rapids in our life. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Michael. Have an awesome day.
All right, you too, my friend. All right, folks, that brings us up to the break. We've got more coming up. One final segment, in fact, for today's show. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I have no idea. But maybe you can help me. Maybe you can drop in and give us your thoughts. I was still looking for somebody to take my quiz on all the political stuff, the vote taking, the elections. My God, my brain. The elections. You want to take my election quiz? You could win a bag of beard cooler coffee. Give us a call. We'll get it squared away. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes on Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break right now, and we are enjoying our discussions. Who else said hi? Did anybody else say hi? Nobody else said hi. Guys. All right. I love the representation of the movie that, why would you go back and watch a movie that you didn't like? And of course, Brian said, cue the Frozen music. I've never seen Frozen. Luckily, my granddaughter, when she was here visiting with us, had not discovered Frozen yet. So apparently I have not had to watch that 4 million times. I could read you just about every line of The Little Mermaid or Beauty and the Beast, because that was my kids. We about wore the videotape out on one of those. That's, yes, I know, Rob, you're showing your age. He says you're showing your age by mentioning Blockbuster, but that is my age. I do remember having, yes, VCR tapes of all the Disney movies. And I think we darn near wore one of them out watching Beauty and the Beast for the millionth time with my daughter. I could probably read you the dialogue on that one. Kids love singing the song on Frozen. Let it go. I just know what the name of it is. I've never actually seen it. But, yeah. No, it's... oh, man. Just kids. What are you going to do? But why would you watch the same movie? And the movie that comes... Whenever anybody talks about that, the one movie that comes to mind is that I watched that is still the worst movie I ever saw was called Dark Star. And it was some kind of quasi-weird ripoff of Star Wars. This was in the late 70s, early 80s. And I remember I watched that thing one time, and I can't remember how old I was. I probably wasn't even 15 yet. And I was like, that is the dumbest thing I have ever watched. The dumbest thing I ever watched. Dark Star. And then about 4 or 5 months ago, somebody said something about dumb movies. And so I went out and Googled it, and I found the trailer for the movie. And yeah, I don't even know why I watched it. It was, the trailer is so dumb. My IQ dropped just watching the trailer. So if you ever want to see something that's just so horrific that you just don't even, Dark Star. That's the name of the thing. Why do you read a book more than once? Says Robbie. There's some stories that I just enjoy. And in fact, I'm listening to a trilogy of novels from Larry Correia called the Grim Noir series. And it is probably I think this is my fourth time. This is either my third or fourth time listening to these stories. And so the question is, why? Why wouldn't I want to listen to a story or hear a good story? I mean, how many people have watched, Star Wars 96 times or whatever their favorite feel-good movie is? Or as Chris was talking about, a show that gives them comfort, or, the my wife calls it junk food television, whatever. I love watching old, movie, or not old movies, but movies that I enjoy. I love watching them over and over and over. I mean, how many times have I seen The Quiet Man with John Wayne? How many times have I seen North by Northwest with Cary Grant, or To Catch a Thief, or Charade? Mr. Lucky, probably one of my favorite movies of all time, Mr. Lucky with Cary Grant. Can't tell you how many times I've seen that movie. I love it. I can see all the twists and turns coming now because I know it by heart, but why not? I love reading books or hearing stories that I've heard before. Simply because there's something about them that's just amazing. Just recently finished reading or re-listening to the entire Wheel of Time series. Hadn't done that in I don't know, a few years. Did the entire thing. So, Make egg Malone. Regarding mail-out ballot, I hadn't received mine till yesterday. This is because it was mailed back to the divisions of elections as undeliverable. I assure you I get mail every day. Went to the website, which directs you to call. The lady confirmed that my ballot was returned and would mail out another. The shocking part is she said thousands of ballots have been returned. There are a few places to vote in person in the state, but call them if you haven't seen a ballot yet. Oh, yeah. Okay. So, good enough. Huge problem. That's a huge problem. If you haven't gotten your ballot yet by now, you probably need to go down and just vote in person at one of the many vote-in-person ballot places, which I'm sure Rob Myers will remind me of to where all they are. There's a list on the website. You can go take a look at all the vote-in-person places that are open for voting. All right, let's I guess we're coming back down to it. We're 20 seconds out. So we're going to continue here in just a moment, and I have no idea what we're going to talk about. Not a single clue. Maybe we'll rehash some of the stuff that Chris talked about and see where it leads us from there. How about that? The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. It's so weird, the direction that Chris Story's visits with us always sends me in a weird direction sometimes, talking about something. And today in the chat room, people started talking because of Chris used the analogy of why would you watch a movie that you hated and rewatch it? Because you like watching things and so that immediately sent us off into down the rabbit hole of movies that we hated in the chat room. Oh man, movies and books and everything else, and why would we watch those things over and over and over again? I don't know. Maybe it's because we need a little comfort. Maybe it's because we're looking for a little bit of predictability. I mean, why do you read a good book that you've read in the past? Why do you want to rewatch? People out there who have watched, Star Wars umpteen times or whatever. Why would you do that? I don't know, because it's a story of good versus evil, good triumphing over evil. It's got a positive ending, or it's predictable, so it gives you something that makes you feel good. I have no idea, but I do like the analogy because it really speaks to me in what Chris was talking about, in that you got to let that resentment go. And if we've seen anything in politics these days, oh man, there is so much resentment. I actually met up with a candidate that I've known for many years on the program, who's a Democrat, and who was saying, yeah, I've been thinking about getting on your, calling you up and getting on your show. I mean, is your number still the same? But I'm like, man, you can come on anytime. We don't have to agree on things. I don't resent people who don't have the same political view that I do. I may disagree with them, but that doesn't mean that I resent them as people. But it seems like that's becoming a harder and harder position these days to try and undertake. It seems like that if you don't agree with me, I'm speaking now as the everyman, or as the kind of the prototypical, person on Facebook, that if you don't agree with me, then you must be fill in the blank, evil or selfish or greedy or just wrong or all of the above. There's a tremendous amount of resentment in those things. That is, it's really, it's really frustrating, but that is kind of where we're at. And so we've got to let go of that resentment. How does that feel about, how does that hurt us? And I would say even to the point of, I'm definitely not happy with the direction that President Biden is taking the country. But me holding a massive amount of resentment towards him doesn't help me. And he doesn't care. He doesn't know that. I mean, it doesn't matter to him that I would resent him. That doesn't help. That doesn't help either of us. It just makes me angry, which, again, in turn, only hurts me. I can fight against what he's doing. I can speak out against it. I can, vote my conscience and try and reverse it. But I refuse to give up that part of my headspace into that and live resentfully towards it. Because again, he don't care. I mean, he just don't care. Yeah, it hurts my pocketbook. You're right, Sandy. It hurts my pocketbook. It hurts my family. But to live in that resentment when I know that he doesn't know me from Adam and doesn't care, what good does it do? All I can do is fight back against it in the best way that I can. But to let go of that resentment, I think, is the important part, Speaking of the Muppet in Chief, any acknowledgement of D-Day? I haven't heard anything on that, by the way. Today is D-Day. Thank you, Brian, for reminding me. I actually thought about that last week, and I wanted to throw something out there, and I totally forgot. But yeah, I didn't see a single mention yesterday about D-Day. I'm sure there probably was somewhere, but let me see here. Yeah, I don't see anything that has anything about D-Day from yesterday on it. That was the 78th anniversary of D-Day yesterday. So, but again, do I resent him for it? No, it's just, it is what it is, Some issues are just so radical, though, yes. somehow need to persevere without being consumed. I have a heck of a time with it these days, admittedly. And again, I think that's part of what, I mean, even Story mentioned it earlier, that's the whole ploy of the news media. The whole ploy of the news media is to stir up those resentments, one against the another. That they should, that's their whole push, is to try and stir up resentments between different groups of folks. And we can't afford that. We can't afford that. I could still disagree and be unhappy about it in a small way without carrying that resentment around with me day in and day out. So yeah, there you go. That's it's pretty much pretty much everything we got going on. His writers forgot to tell him about D-Day. Yeah, I mean, he's forgotten. It's just one of those things. The Muppet handlers didn't get their things in there. And that's not resentment. That's just comedy right there. That's what that's all about. So, coming up on tomorrow's program, Mike Shower will be joining us, and purportedly Sarah Palin, but I am not 100% sure on Palin yet. We're still working on the details with her scheduler and her handler, but I know Mike Showers is going to be joining us tomorrow, so we look forward to that as well. Let's see. I got time for one more call if we're quick. I got just under 2 minutes here, and we will go over to the phones and see who it is. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good morning. It's Al from Fairbanks.
Hello, Al. What's on your mind?
Two things. One, why maybe you're not getting any advertising for the public service announcements for how the election is supposed to be filled out and submitted.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody was probably listening to your show, and you're doing such a wonderful job doing it that they said, well, his listeners are already getting educated.
It could possibly be. Possibly. Or we're making them so angry they're like, no money for you.
Yeah. The second thing is sustainable budgets. That term kind of bothers me since we do a budget annually. How do you make it sustainably, or what's the definition of sustainable budgets?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, to me, sustainable means that we could live within our means, which we're not doing. We've been borrowing from savings for years. This is the first time we've been able to pay with a whole budget without having to go into savings. So I think, you're right. I mean, sustainable is a loaded definition sometimes. We'll have Brad Keithley address that next week. How about that? We'll have him. I'll ask him specifically what he means, because he is Alaskans for sustainable budgets. We'll ask him exactly what he means by that, Al, and maybe we can get an answer there. Thank you for calling in. All right, folks, we are out of time. We got more coming up tomorrow, The Michael Duke Show. Be kind, live well, love one another. We'll see you then. Okay, my friends. Robbie says it means chop up the credit cards. Yeah, I mean, sustainable would be something that, you're going to live within that income and you know what it's going to be. Why would fascists want to remember D-Day? Says Timothy. I mean, it's also a valid point, Timothy. That's exactly it. Why would they want to commemorate that? Didn't he do something weird for D-Day a couple of years ago? I'm trying to remember. He did something real weird. It said something, I can't remember. I'll have to go back and look at it now. But yeah, didn't mention it that I could see. All right, folks, we're out of time for today. We got more coming up tomorrow. Don't forget to like and share. Don't forget, if you haven't, to go over to YouTube and subscribe and ring the bell there as well. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Dukes Show.